if you need to. Good morning. The City of Southport Board of Aldermen Workshop and Agenda Review Meeting, June 2nd, 2023 is now called to order. Thank you for being here, and City staff, thank you for arranging this meeting and for the presentations and the information that will be here today. Today's special day, every day is a special day in Southport, but June 2nd, 1930, Brunswick County Hospital opened its doors. So Randy's great-grandfather, J. Arthur Dozier, they built this hospital around him, so we celebrate that today in Southport. And we've also, Randy, to let you know, we had our Department of Medicine meeting today. It went well, 7 o'clock this morning. And so our doctors had excellent conversation and discussions today about the health of our citizens in Southport. So again, thank you all for being here. Our invocation will be by Reverend Alderman Lowe Davis, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Let us pray. Almighty, most merciful, loving, and kind God, we thank you for the blessings you bestow upon Southport, the opportunities for health, wellness, going all the way back to June the 2nd, many, many, many years ago. Guide us today to have similar wisdom. Guide us toward making the good and right decisions for the people of Southport and all who visit and work here. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Alderman Davis. Our city manager and Alderman Alt could not be with us today, so we wish them well in their endeavors today. So thank you. Our assistant city manager is here, and Ms. Dutton, and so she will be filling in today in that capacity. So thank you, and thank you for the agenda today. Item D is approval of the agenda with the revision that we're going to add Mr. Tony McEwen of the American Flood Coalition as item 2 for a presentation. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Alderman Allen, second by Alderman Lombardi. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. On our agenda, of course, we have a presentation by Mr. Clark Harris. It's going to be virtual. Then we'll have Mr. McEwen. Then we'll have the right-of-way discussion, update on dredging the city dock, the selection of a dredging contractor. We'll have the Southport Symposium preparation, and then we'll do the agenda review. So now we'll have our presentation of unique spaces to save conservation by Clark Harris.
Mr. Harris.
Screen now?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for having me, everyone. I really appreciate it. We're excited to share this conservation project. I've got a quick presentation and then happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
So starting off the overview, so this property is right near the proposed site for the tractor supply. So on the main highway there, just north of the main highway, and it's between that and the Boiling Springs Lakes Plantation. So I'm sorry I don't have a larger map to show the exact placement, but hopefully that area where Tractor Supply near Lowe's Hardware kind of comes into play there on the main highway. The important thing, what you're seeing here in the map, the red border with the green lines in it is the property we're proposing to buy. We already own what's in the green borders, but we're trying to assemble close to 1,000 acres of conserved property. It also borders property that is under conservation with the Nature Conservancy and the Plant Conservation Program. So this would create a contiguous conservation area of nearly 8,000 acres. We have a grant in with North Carolina Land and Water Fund with their acquisition program to help pay for the land that we're going to be purchasing, and then we will do a state-held conservation easement with them if they decide to fund the project. A little bit about the land itself. C.F. Smith is the developer. Originally it was 2,000 acres, and this is again on Highway 211. In 2018 they donated some acres to us. Now they've decided they wanted to potentially develop the rest or sell it if it made sense. So we've put together a competitive offer to purchase the property for $3.2 million, and they are very happy with that. A little bit about us. We're a North Carolina-based conservation group, nonprofit land trust. We have a mission of protecting high-quality aquatic resources, and we have a lot of experience with state and federal grants. We're already in your area. We're on Eagles Island, working on the Alligator Creek Restoration Program, opening up that creek, getting it back to its original functioning wetlands, and then conserving part of that property. So we are very familiar with the area and excited to be working on this project. Looking at the timeline, the big decision comes out in September for the grant. At that point, we'll move forward with closing on the property, and then we'll put it under easement, and we'll be seeking a long-term owner. We can hold the property long-term, but that is not our goal. We would rather get it under conservation, have it paid for, and then hand it over to the appropriate person. We're not sure who that would be. Looking at the benefits, water quality. We know that's huge. The headwaters of Horton Creek are on this property. It's probably half of the property is in the wellhead protection area. It also sits over the Castlehane Aquifer. There is documented Venus flytrap and red cockaded woodpecker, among other species. And again, this would create a landscape scale conservation project of 8,000 acres. So what do we need, and why are we talking to you guys? Letter of support is really the ask. The Land and Water Fund wants to see that the community wants to get behind this, and the more support we can come with, the better our chances are, where they say, okay, it's not just Unique Places asking for money here, it's something the community is excited about and they can really see the benefits. We're also open to connections to funding sources, but I'm not here to ask for money, I'm just here to ask for support. So that is the quick presentation there. I know you have a lot on your agenda, so I wanted to run through it, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Who do you, just a quick question, who do you typically seek out as an owner, potential owner? Would it be North Carolina Wildlife? Or who are usually you in partnership with? Is it private owners?
I may need you to repeat the question, but I think I heard the long-term ownership. So entities that could qualify, the Nature Conservancy, it could be the county or the city. We are happy to own it. We would then hire another entity to maintain and steward the easement itself. So that part can come later, but we are open. Whoever it would be an appropriate entity, either a municipality or a land trust, another land trust.
So we're already through our budget season, so obviously no money there, right, Alderman? Not revisiting anything. But a letter of support definitely, I think, would be in order.
To our manager, can we do that by consent? You know, we don't typically vote at our workshop meeting here. Can we do that by consensus?
Will we be reading aloud the letter Thursday night and agreeing to it then?
Yeah, if we can add that to that agenda, and we can have the letter ready by then, and then, and certainly put it on our consent agenda, but read it at the meeting.
Clark?
I'd like to know more about
Oh.
where this property is, honestly. I mean, this is,
Property's right beside Southport Crossing, where Lowe's Foods and the Bagel Dock is. They're building Tractor Supply, and it's right beside that.
is it north of that? If you go up the extension, it's north of that and to the left?
I believe so, yes.
I believe it extends right up to BSL. It's all undeveloped land back in there now. And some of it's wetlands. I have a question for Clark. Clark, hi,
Yeah.
this is Lo.
Hey there.
I just wanted to say, if you find some nice conservation funding sources, would you let us know? We've got some things we'd like to buy.
Yes, of course. So, as I mentioned, the North Carolina Land and Water, I mean, we've got a grant in to cover the entire purchase price. That would be, and they may do it over multiple years. We've seen them do that before, and we're set up for that, where we could accommodate that if they have to do it in multiple years.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments?
Right now, you're gonna draft a letter. We'll add this to the agenda for this week and we'll vote.
That was the plan, yes. Yeah, just consent
Okay.
agenda, yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
See a downside to this? It's not in our city limits.
But we, we support endeavors that are not within our city limits, or comment on things that are not. We're a community.
Yes.
It's a nice change from seeing a plat with 1,000 homes and that type thing. So this is really, yeah, that's right, 1,542. Thank you. Yes.
I guess one other question that I might have is, what other municipalities have you reached out to and are showing their support, if you don't mind us asking?
No, I don't mind at all. I am planning on starting with you guys, since it kind of made the most sense, and it just seemed like it was kind of closest to home. So the idea was hopefully get support from Southport, and then go and speak to Boiling Springs Lakes, all the other surrounding communities that kind of have a stake here, especially with the water quality, and build it. But I'd hope that you guys seem the most approachable, and just being kind of in your backyard, it made sense to start with you.
We are a very friendly and approachable city, and that's the way I like it. It starts with the mayor. All right.
Now, if y'all want to see it where we're talking about on the map, I can show you on the map, or if we have an idea, not sure if that's valuable or not.
Love to see that.
Okay, here you go. So I've got a map here of this larger area. This is Lowe's Home Improvement, Highway 211, going here. We are talking about this area right here. So just north of that, you can almost see where that's Orton Creek, the tributary starting there. You can see it. So I don't have a property boundary to lay over it, but it's the larger area is just north of 211 here. I hope that gives a little bit of context.
That's excellent. Excellent presentation. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Clark.
Okay, and just let me know if there's any follow-up questions. Happy to answer anything. Thank you again for your time, and we hope to, make this a valuable project. It is worth saying that there is a long-term opportunity as well with a later phase that could become potentially a community park. We don't want to get too into that now because that is down the road, but if we can get the ball rolling on this conservation, it's going to open up other opportunities as well. So hopefully we can add a lot of value, and I appreciate your time and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The road, but walking trails, nature trails, and so on, which of course is in the county's Parks and Recreation. In fact, number one, and in ours too.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. Okay. Yeah, and the and anything else we're trying to conserve, yeah, we'll just line it up, yeah. All right, next on our agenda will be Mr. Tony McEwen from the American Flood Coalition.
It's fancy here in Southport, right? I wasn't nervous, now I'm nervous. Thank you for Travis for arranging this. Like I said, he told me to keep it tight, and I do have a decent amount of slides, but I'm going to breeze through. But I don't want to give short shrift to anything that you all may be interested in, so feel free to stop me and ask any questions. You can go on to the next. So my name is Tony McEwen. I'm the Carolinas Director for the American Flood Coalition. Just kind of real quickly, the American Flood Coalition is a national 501c3. We just celebrated our 5-year anniversary. I have been here for about 4 months. I live in Wilmington. Some of y'all may have interacted with me. I may have interacted with y'all in the past. I used to spend a lot of time in Southport when I was a district director, economic development director as well for Congressman Mike McIntyre. Most recently, I served as a state and federal lobbyist for the city of Wilmington. So did a lot of work with your previous councils, previous staff, and that type of thing. What I do is I direct all of our activities. Again, we're a national organization, but I direct all of our activities in North and South Carolina. I'm a registered lobbyist in North and South Carolina, which is really just a fancy way of saying I get paid to bug people for a living, but it's for a good cause, I'd like to think. And I am not this is a very technical issue, flood resilience policy. I am not a technical person. I deal more with the politics and the organizing side of this. But the folks you see here on the screen, these are some of the brightest minds that you'll find anywhere in the nation on flood resilience policy. We have a number of folks that are Ivy Leaguers, PhDs, folks that have been former chiefs of staff to members of Congress, that type of thing. Some of the most thoughtful folks on what is a very complex issue and what is very much the most costly natural disaster that we face in this country by far, and certainly top of mind issue here in North Carolina and southeastern North Carolina in particular. Next slide, please. Just real quickly, these are the 4 pillars. And let me say real quick, what I'm ultimately want to do is share some of what our activities are, share where we're at policy-wise on this issue in this state and nation as quickly as I can. But I'm going to ultimately ask you all to consider membership within the American Flood Coalition. But let me preface that request by saying we are not asking for any resources at all. It's a free membership. We are an extremely well-resourced national organization, I'm proud to say, that oftentimes is in a position to return resources to our members, certainly on advocacy, but as well as technical assistance. So 4 pillars for what we work on: economy, communities, rebuilding, military. Next slide, please. Members of our organization, we are the largest coalition dedicated to this issue in the nation. We are made up of federal champions, which is how members of Congress can join as members to comply with ethics rules. Cities, towns, and counties, that's kind of our bread and butter as far as who we represent and work on behalf of. Elected officials, businesses, military groups, civic and academic groups, as an example in South Carolina, the Myrtle Beach Chamber of Commerce is a member as an example. Next slide. So here's just some spotlight of some of our members. We have communities as small as Fair Bluff, and if you're likely familiar with Fair Bluff in Columbus County, that is a community that was almost wiped off the face of earth and may yet be from flooding. And that is a very small community. Not only do they not have staff dedicated to what is the biggest issue facing their community, they don't even have a full-time manager. They have a manager, a very impressive guy named Al Leonard. Some of y'all may know him, but he's shared amongst 5 communities, all extreme flood risk communities. And then communities as big as City of Wilmington, we have the Speaker of the House, Cape Fear Council of Governments. I know you all know Representative Charlie Miller. Next slide, please. This is our, maybe this slide's a little bit outdated, but this is based on our membership role in North Carolina. We have around 100 members. Again, you know, going from big to small and everything in between. Next slide. So here's our federal champions. So again, this is how a member of Congress can join our organization. As you see very notable people, both Republican and Democrats, folks like Senator Mark Warner from Virginia, but also folks like Senator Marco Rubio. These are people that we have their ear, and we work very regularly with them and their staff. A lot of organizations that work in this space, the ones that do, I'll just be real frank with you, tend to come from a particular side of the political spectrum. We are extremely unique that we create a safe space to where both Republicans and Democrats can come together on an issue, and God knows that we need issues where folks can come together on, and I'm proud to say this is one of the few issues where you can kind of check that part at the door. Next slide. So here's the states that we work nationwide, but we have a keen focus on Texas, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, but we're very active in Virginia, Iowa, New York as well. Next slide. So just a real quick level set. So this is the framework. As I say, we work in, you know, Texas, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina in particular, but this is kind of what guides our work. And I'll just very briefly, as you see here, leadership and accountability, who is in charge? That's a particular issue we have in North Carolina, whereas they got a head start on us in South Carolina. That's that kind of one throat to choke concept. And it builds confidence with the legislatures to invest more money and create policy around this when they have one entity they can go to. We're lacking that in North Carolina currently. Data and risk assessment, a big part of this is using forward-looking data. That's one of the key concepts that we work on all day, every day. So what's at risk? Planning, what should we prioritize, funding and financing, how do we pay for it? Never easy question. And then developing statewide standards. Next slide. Next slide, please. Sorry. And so let me just say real quick, thank you to Southport. When I was with the City of Wilmington and advocating on their behalf, after Hurricane Florence, we brought together a group that ultimately amounted to over 60 mayors and county commission chairs that came together, and I, at the staff level, facilitated kind of a listening session across eastern North Carolina. We came up with 6 priorities. In the 2021 state budget, 5 of those 6 priorities were funded right here to the tune of $357 million. So it puts North Carolina really in rarefied air. As far as the level of resources and policy improvements that have been put in place. Really, Florida and Louisiana are in a whole nother kind of atmosphere, but North Carolina, with what the legislature has done recently, we're approaching that. Next slide. So just, you know, we organize folks to work together. So this is a recent lobby day we did on March 8th. I think there's about a dozen different communities from across North Carolina. Communities from as far west as Haywood County and as far west as Nags Head were with us in Raleigh that day. Next slide. So just real quick, what we're working on this year at the legislature on community's behalf, trying to get some additional staffing for the Department of Environmental Quality. One of the key issues, and this is where this can get kind of technical, in the 2021 state budget, we got $24 million for a flood resilience blueprint, and that starts in the Neuse River Basin. And what that is a basin-wide modeling effort to make sure we're making the proper decisions and not just playing politics with how taxpayer money is invested in this state. And so a legislator, a conservative legislator from Duplin County kind of said it best. He said that for as long as he recalls in this state, when it related to flood resilience policy, they were basically throwing dartboards at a dartboard with a blindfold on. Darts at a dartboard with blindfold on. And for the first time, once we can get this blueprint completed, and the first step of that is underway now, they'll take the blindfold off and be able to make more informed decisions going forward. And he said it was the most proud moment of his legislative tenure, and he's been there almost 20 years. But they need additional staffing at DEQ. There's major issues at the state with staffing at agency level. Next slide, please. Here's something that may be of interest to you, and I would recommend you working with your staff to maybe get a project in the queue. So in the 2021 budget, for the first time ever, so if you travel around the state like I do and talk about this issue, the kind of tie that binds all these communities together is transportation related flood concerns. So flooding that has an impact on transportation arteries. So whether you're in Haywood County and the rock slides that happen there, or whether you're here in Southport and the flooding you may have on a roadway that's nuisance flooding, what have you. We tried to address that for the first time in 2021. There was $15 million that we got towards that, which is a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not a ton. There was 19 grants that went out. The two biggest grants actually went to Transylvania County and Wilkesboro. But we have tried to listen to our local members of the council around the state and staff and try to advance something that's important to them. We got legislation introduced in both the House and the Senate. Representative Charlie Miller is on the House bill for $50 million for transportation flood resilience grants. I'm pleased to say that the governor recommended $40 million in his budget. The House passed $25 million and the Senate passed $20 million. And I was at the legislature yesterday making sure that once conference committee takes place that we end up in a good spot. I'm very confident we're going to get some level of funding, and I think it's certainly going to be in the tens of millions. So what I'd recommend to Southport is that y'all get something in the queue and be prepared to make a request for that. The first iteration of that, Brunswick County got significant funds. Boiling Spring Lakes got funds. Brunswick County got funds. Navassa got funds. Leland got, I think, about $950,000 for a resilient route study. So that's, I think, something that may be meaningful to y'all. And we can just kind of go through we can kind of cut the slideshow because I don't want to take up too much of your time. What I will say that is, along with membership, we provide technical assistance to you. If y'all as an elected official or your staff want to connect with me, I'll get you to somebody that's way smarter than me that can talk through a particular need or concern y'all have. We can hear y'all out as far as what you're looking for out of Washington, out of Raleigh on these issues, and be your free advocate, frankly. But what selfishly we need from y'all is to join the coalition, because as we're working in Raleigh and Washington, if we can say, I mean, everyone knows Southport, everyone loves Southport, y'all are blessed to live here, and I appreciate y'all having me this morning, but if I can say that, hey, we're working on behalf of Southport, Wilmington, what have you, it helps us get done what we're trying to get done on behalf of your community to make it more livable and ultimately more safe. So we do quarterly get-togethers to where y'all can learn about what's happening in Washington and Raleigh. Y'all can learn about innovations happening around the nation as well that y'all can maybe adopt and learn from here locally. We oftentimes, on our dime, will fly local elected officials to Washington. I was on staff for about a month, and we flew about 40-some mayors and county commissioners from North Carolina up to D.C. for 3 days of immersive kind of policy experience on these issues. So, again, just very simply, would love for y'all to be a part of this, and I appreciate y'all hearing me out this morning. Sorry if I went on a little bit long.
It's a great presentation. I can see another item on our consent agenda with joining the Flood Coalition. I mean, if you look at the news, if you just look today, one of the lead stories is the weather, the flooding, and it is truly probably the largest natural disaster that we have to mitigate. And we see it here in Southport, fortunately not frequently, but it's certainly possible. So I think whatever, Madam Clerk, whatever we need to do.
It's actually on the agenda as a regular item.
Good. So we're good.
Cool. Okay. Thank you all very much.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next up. Item 3, this will be right-of-way enforcement. Travis Henley.
Gosh, I have no idea how I'm going to follow that with this topic. I wanted to thank Tony as well for coming. I've known Tony for a while. Worked with him in previous capacities. They do a lot of good work, the American Flood Coalition does. Yes, I did. I appreciate him moving quickly because I have about 90 minutes worth of right-of-way stuff for you. I'm just kidding. I really have just two questions for the board today. You've had this memo that's in front of you in your packet today for some time. Really, at this point, staff needs direction, one, on what the board would like to see from a surfacing standard standpoint for parking areas within the right-of-way, and then what you would like to see from a grandfathering perspective of existing right-of-way encroachments. Once we have the answers to those questions, we'll finish up the draft ordinance amendments that already exist. The ones that can come straight to you all will come straight to you all. The ones that involve the UDO will, of course, go to the planning board first. But at this point, staff are seeking the board's direction on those two items.
I would like to say that at this point, before we give you direction about surfacing, can we not get input from the public on this? I mean, as I drove down here to the meeting, I turned from west down, came down to Moore, and every driveway between west and Moore is gravel. It looks great, and it's been gravel or just flat dirt for a long, long time. Now, the first block is such a wide right-of-way that some of it is paved, some of it's just plain grass. To include impervious concrete, asphalt, and so on in a location that is so vulnerable to flooding, drainage problems, and to allow something that is going to not drain well, I think is a mistake. Gravel or some kind of pervious surface, you guys have heard me on this before. So I'd like to also know what the public, I mean, the people who are our neighbors, the residents of this town are going to want to have some strong input. So before we pick a surface that we're going to advocate for, I think it's time to start presenting this to the public in a number of workshops after we get through the budget.
I certainly agree that we need public input. I think that it's helpful to have discussion and make some, not decisions, because we're not approving anything, but to have some conversation on paper rather than it be all over the map, and then we modify it based on that input. So, and I do believe in multiple workshops, so I'm not disagreeing with you.
I mean, we've already got in this, as you said, voluminous memo, which is wonderfully comprehensive, appreciate it. We have all of the options there. I mean, we don't need to, it's not a mishmash, it's right there. This or this or this.
I was just listening, and I agree, public input, absolutely. But, you all were elected by the public to discuss these issues, and I think that is important. And he asked, I think, two questions about the parking areas and about the grandfathering, what you want to grandfather in or not. And I think we can at least have that discussion here at the table, and certainly no decisions being made. And I agree with you, Reverend Alderman Davis, we want the public input. Workshop would be good, but we have a workshop today, and if someone was here today, they could speak. First Lady, we know you're here, but this is, we know how you feel about it. And so do we ask, I guess, first of all, grandfather, let's take the second one first. Are we going to go around and pull up the bushes and the azaleas and the things that are already planted? And I would think not. I think what we would do, if there is a safety issue or a problem with that being there, then we will have to mitigate it in some way. But as far as going around and saying these azaleas have to go, or this gardenia, or these hydrangeas, all these beautiful plants that may be in the right of way, no, we're not going to do that. But they also have to know that if we have to mitigate something in that area, it will be dug up, and the city will not pay to replace it. So if that's reasonably clear and the board feels comfortable with that, I think that's half of what our planner's asking for. Is that correct? Does that seem to at least get 50% where we need to go?
Yes, sir.
I have a question about the grandfathering, which certainly seems reasonable, but how do we frame that? How long can you have had your whatever, your little brick wall, or your hydrangea, or your azalea?
Yeah.
What are the parameters of grandfathering?
Yeah, I guess when the ordinance is passed, that stops.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
That would be my
Mr. Henley?
recommendation,
Yeah.
yes, is to pick a date, make it the day that the ordinance is adopted, make it, ideally, we don't have a scenario in which, because this paradigm from the beginning has had the notion of a grace period attached to it. Hopefully, we don't have a scenario in which the ordinance is passed and then we have folks constructing God knows what in the right of way during the grace period. So, yeah, I would say we pick a date, and I think and we've kind of outlined it. I know Assistant Manager Dutton had a great idea with, staff would be out documenting right-of-way encroachments, I should say, and then also ask the public if you want to make sure that your encroachment is grandfathered, you provide the information to us so that we make sure that we have the documentation of it. So I think there's a way to take a collaborative approach with the public to make sure that we're documenting everything.
Definitely collaborative, cooperative, polite, absolutely.
Travis?
I like all of
to
those.
have a-
I like all of those words that the mayor just used. And I think that, giving people time to remove these encroachments is just that. However, they're encroachments, and, not knowing the law or ignorance thereof is not an excuse. This isn't something new. This isn't something we're proposing today. It has existed. I think this approach of grandfathering in, boulders that are right next to the street, and fences that encroach 20 feet into our right-of-way, and, structures that prohibit people from parking in parking spots this is ludicrous.
Something like that wouldn't be, because it's a safety issue. It's a violation that is those that are egregious would ask to be removed. We're not just grandfathering everything that's there in, but it would have to be case by case, and you need Mr. Henley makes a good point that they need to come and in some way register this encroachment. The city's going to survey, and we'll go out and say, this is, and I know one area where you're talking about, that's just not going to be acceptable. I agree with you, Alderman Carroll, and that's just something, and Mayor Pro Tem has talked about that spot for a long time. So now's the time when we have an ordinance, and we can make these changes. I mean, we have the enforcement authority to do so. So I agree with you.
We also have, as long as we're, kind of pinpointing specific egregious properties, right next to Kingsley Park, there is a property that has a pretty deep right-of-way, and that would be the parking for Kingsley Park, except it has been planted, it's a lawn, it's a fence right next to the street, and so on. And I'm not really keen on grandfathering that in.
I think we're all
we were
talking about. Yeah, but the same can be said for every single one of those properties along Bay Street. But it extends beyond that. It extends to west-west. It extends to every street in town. You know, this idea that you can prohibit, you know, I think about, you know, my area of town where, yeah, you know, the Methodist park right out front, you know, and they park in what I think is my driveway. And so, exactly. So I'm struggling to see that, you know, we can prohibit, and that's what's happening. We're prohibiting people from parking any vertical structure. The whole purpose of the ordinance, I believe the current ordinance reads that it has to be in keeping with the horizontal grade, sod, driveways, not plants that would prohibit parking, not plants that take away from, you know, they're a great example of not being able to see around the corner West and Lord. You know, yes, it's unsafe, but also how do I pick and choose what's unsafe or what's, so I'm not into grandfathering, if y'all haven't gotten that. Also, Lo, I appreciate your comments and coming right behind the flood guy. It kind of seems wrong for me to say that I'm good with hardened surfaces as well.
One of the things I want to say is that our current code of ordinances says that an encroachment which interferes with the free passage of persons or vehicles within said right-of-way or sidewalk, or which otherwise creates a hazard to the public. That's what we're talking about. And so all this land belongs to the citizens, and free passage of persons and vehicles, that is the plan for, and this is 1610, existing encroachments on right-of-way and how to deal with them. So clearly the intent has previously existed to cure encroachments. And so what I would say is about that is I'm a little less severe. I do think that anything that is a safety hazard, a visibility, we do have issues where you pull up to a stop sign and you can't see. I know that people have put a parking pad up against a sidewalk on a corner that makes it, if you're approaching that stop sign, a small child could be in front. I've seen big trucks parked on that. So in my mind, that is a safety issue and should never have been allowed to do, even though it's consistent with the horizontal plane. We need rules that say corners have special conversation around them, just like they do in setbacks in the UDO. So we need a conversation about that. I do 100% agree that hardened structures, fences, walls, anything up hardened that is in the right of way, I appreciate the 6-month grace period for them to remove them. So I certainly support that. I think, and as far as the vegetation goes, in this, you said existing trees shall be permitted to remain. I would ask that the shall be permitted, at this point, the city owns whatever's in right-of-way. The plants, whatever, I assume legally, the city owns it. Regardless of who planted it, the city owns it. So I just would like, shall be permitted to remain, to make sure, even though we know the city can come in and do whatever they need to in right-of-way to cut those trees down, I wouldn't want that to be a misunderstanding that if something needed to change, that the city didn't, because we know what shall means.
Add at the city's discretion at the end.
And Karen, I don't.
Forward with this, I sure hope that, well, I mean, are we going to discuss this on Thursday night? No, okay. Well, when we do start discussing it, I sure hope our city attorney is with us to explain to people that they will be wasting their money if they try to sue us. And I bring this up because there is a particularly notable encroachment. And the owner and the person who put that in stated went through all kinds of citations of law and told us that if we touched any of this, he would sue us and win. So I'd like our city attorney to
have
be
attorneys
braced
too.
for that.
Karen, I don't want you to think that I'm so stubborn or strong-headed that I apologize if it came across like that. I think one of the issues that I have with us picking and choosing what does or doesn't stay is that it's subjective. So your idea of what's safe is, could be more subjective than, and so, we've had a staff, and I don't, this is not you guys, but we've had staff that has looked the other way, and the subjective thought is that it's okay. It's okay, just know that we're going to take it out. That's, they don't see that, okay, it's not safe. At the bottom of Bay Street, it is unsafe. So I just don't like the idea that we're going to pick and choose who does or doesn't get to leave something in the right of way. And that's almost what it feels like to me. So we either go all in or we just say, keep it. I don't know how you do one or the other.
And I mean, as part of that, so the biggest, to me, the two biggest uses, if you will, of the city right of way is the enjoyment of the view and the openness and all that. And then there's parking, obviously. So the problem with leaving azaleas and hydrangeas and stuff is that you've allowed some people to create a situation where that view and parking use is being blocked, whereas other people haven't planted anything, and so the view and the use of parking still exists. And I mean, you can't, you either got to take everything out or take nothing out. I mean, I don't know how else I hate to be the one that's partly responsible for causing a lot of these, attractive landscaping, admittedly, to be removed out of the right of way. But I don't know how you can justify having some people block off their yard to the public's use and other people not, just because it happened at different times.
So he's just looking for some direction, and if you want an all or none approach, I mean, this is the right of way, and this city, and this should not be there, then that's this board's right, along with listening to the public, to decide that. Absolutely.
Your memo to us also pointed out that some people have, or believe they have, an actual agreement for encroachment into the right-of-way. Am I correct on that? Did I read that right?
There are approved site plans that I have found from previous years where the right-of-way encroachment was shown on the site plan that was approved by staff as part of a building permit. So, and in previous versions of the Unified Development Ordinance prior to the rewrite in 2020, there was a section in the UDO that said that vegetative encroachments could be done with the agreement of the UDO administrator. But it was very, to Alderman Carroll's point, subjective as to what the UDO administrator, or prior to that, the building inspector, was supposed to be looking at and making that determination. So
One of the things that I think, for me, hardened structures are especially, I have a lot of consternation. I don't disagree with Alderman Allen or Alderman Carroll about an approach, but it's clear in the UDO, no fence or wall shall be erected without the issuance of a zoning permit. But people build in the right-of-way without a zoning permit. So that's, to me, wrong on many, many levels. based on our ordinances, multiple ordinances.
What do we do with, and I've spoken to a few people that called me down and asked me to come down, that were given permission. The house at the bottom of Atlantic Street, he was given permission to do that, is what I heard and what was confirmed. So what do you do in a case like that?
I'd have to defer to the city attorney for that question.
Yeah.
I just don't want to.
I think that's where your biggest problems are going to be. And I got another comment. When you say the use of gravel is permitted, there's a big range of gravels. Some of them are very loose. We've got to specify a gravel that can be compacted and that stays compacted, because it has to have so many fines and so much stone. And I think that's something that should be addressed, because gravel is a big ranges.
I agree, and I'm not sure though that I think maybe we want to, we need to think about whether we want to specify things that won't be compacted, that remain pervious, what I guess like 57 stone as opposed to crush and run. I mean, we got to decide whether we want impervious or not first.
Yeah,
But
I'm in agreement, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm in agreement that because we do have a plethora of things around, and I think that Jeannie is sort of out of the bottle with regard to surface. I don't want asphalt. I don't think we want individual citizens putting down asphalt as a surface, period. But as far as in the ordinance, it talks about parking pads in code. I'm in the code of ordinances now, not in the UDO, and it talks about them being 10 by 20, and to allow to allow doors to open and that sort of thing. So, and I'm just speaking, but so using that out of the code of ordinance as a space, you're suggesting about 2 spaces in the non-conforming. Then that could be your dimensions from that, for that. And then perhaps the driveway connection could be considered one of those 2. Like in front of my house, as an example, I have a driveway. So if I wanted, which I don't, but if I wanted to put a connection to the street, then that 20 or whatever connection would count. It might be longer than 20 depending on, but driveway, you make province for driveway connection, would count as one of those 2, so that we didn't get overrun with impervious where they do, because we've got people who have done the whole thing in front of their house.
I'm in agreement with that. I think that it should not, anything that they put in should not exceed 20 feet in width, and then whatever the distance is between the sidewalk and the street is what it is. So I can get behind that. I think that's a very reasonable expectation. One parking pad, in the event you have a driveway, you've got the driveway and a parking pad. And they don't have to be contiguous, but no more
the
than
20 feet include the driveway.
Yeah.
Will there be in the ordinance who maintains this? If somebody puts in an entrance to their driveway, whether it be gravel or asphalt, if we would permit it, who maintains it? It's city property. Does the city maintain it? Well, I mean,
Mentioned,
but
that
it
was
should
mentioned
be
in the memo.
specified.
You're right. It was mentioned in the memo.
My question was, who maintains, if you do have a parking space and you put down some compactable gravel, who maintains that?
It would have to be the homeowner. The city's not going to
Well, I
maintain
mean,
it.
I think we
Because we don't, if we tear it up, we don't fix it.
yeah.
If we need to put a pipe in or a electric line or whatever we do,
Because gravel can get pretty unruly and ugly looking if it's not maintained, so we should maybe put that in the regulations that they have to keep it.
if they choose gravel, then they would have to. But I don't know. Right, period. Whatever they choose, they would have to maintain. Right. part of the problem, I'll tell you this, part of the problem with gravel in areas where I am low, on Atlantic, take for instance, where I've got the sidewalk and then our parking is up against the sidewalk. I have a neighbor that does have gravel and it travels. You really can't control gravel like that. Yeah.
I feel like we're getting into we're getting into contracting issues here.
No, you're not.
I've got okay. Several people that I've seen put in gravel driveways recently, there's a lip of wood that is that frames it, and so it doesn't spread all over the place.
That doesn't,
Never wanted to be a road contractor.
that doesn't, yeah, that doesn't help with pea gravel. And I am, Karen and I have talked about this. I absolutely hate pea gravel. It is like, you can't walk on it, you can't drive on it, it's horrible. So there, but I mean, how do we control,
Putting in a
an example,
specification.
we got a call about someone who, in the right of way, hit a patch of gravel that was loose and fell off their bike. I mean, that's a serious issue.
Brought up
So-
about a specification for the gravel so that it doesn't do that. And it has enough fines in it to keep it together.
Why don't we have staff look for and our engineers, we have engineers here as well, and they would probably be able to help us in terms of the ordinance as to what type of, we want to keep it pervious, and we want type of gravel that can keep it that way also, that it's safe. And we understand about grandfathering. I think I hear that it's either all or none in that regard because it's so subjective. And safety is first. It's has to be. And we have to be fair to everyone. And we've also had the parking discussion. These areas need to be open for parking, and if they're going to put a parking pad or a driveway down, then it has to meet certain qualifications. So if we could put that into a form from what you've heard from today, Mr. Henley, then we can bring this back at another workshop and advertise it so Alderman Davis, so our public can be here, and specifically, so they can comment. Yeah, so they'll come, and if they don't, then they're leaving it up to your expertise and staff's expertise, which is fine. You were elected to do this. So any further discussion on?
Just one
right
thing.
away.
There are a lot
Yes.
of cases where you have a pretty large tree, and there's plantings around that tree, which is really to our advantage, so people don't park on the roots. Would that be allowed, where if it's close to the tree and you wouldn't want to park there anyway? So, I mean, that's just, it just brings on more and more options.
I mean, you could say something within 10 feet of a tree or, an existing tree, whatever, and grandfather, whatever. But additionally, I think when you are quoting the gate, brick, stone, vegetation, I think there needs to be a clarification about grass. I think, because I think y'all had some consternation about trying to figure out, it says vegetation, so does that also include grass? I think to clarify that grass is allowed,
So, Travis, I don't know that there is a way for us to limit our liability with these structures, but if someone did something in the right-of-way and someone was hurt, is there a way for us to put the liability back on the owner?
I'll work with Brady on that.
Brady, okay. And then, just to reiterate, I'm not opposed to hardened surfaces.
So have you gotten what you need from us other than the grandfathering issue, which
I
we're
think
kind of hung
so.
up on?
What I was going to say to the board before we wrap this up is that the next time the board sees this, it will be in the it won't be in a memo form anymore. It'll be actual ordinance language. So that way we can, from the perspective of taking this to the public, we can show them exactly what the ordinance is going to look like.
And would it be hugely difficult to have two separate sections in that ordinance? One with grandfathering, one without grandfathering?
No,
Just
not at all.
Those are basically the only real two either or issues that we're dealing with.
We'll provide,
Right.
we'll provide
So,
both
I mean,
options.
If we could write both, yeah.
And
that would
if Brady thinks of a third option, then we'll provide whatever options we can come up with.
do some kind of partial grandfathering for bushes, but not fences or,
Well, and-
whatever.
And I would-
The problem is we're going to make it so complicated and hard to enforce that we're not going to get anywhere.
I would offer
Another
too
problem.
that the grandfathering, at least from staff's perspective, would be it's a one-shot deal. And so, say I have a fence that goes out into the right-of-way and the board votes to allow the grandfathering. Well, if the city needs to come in there 5 years down the road and replace the water line, I don't get to put the fence back. It's not only that the city's not going to pay for, the loss of the fence, you're also, once it's gone, you have to comply with the ordinance as it's written. And the same as it would apply for new.
While we have really good staff today, that's not always going to be the case. And, a great ordinance about short-term vacation rentals was passed not long ago, and it grandfathered in those that existed and said that no new short-term vacation rentals should exist outside of BD and CBD, I believe. And they are popping up everywhere. So this idea that it's a snowball. And so before we know it, people are approving site plans again that have landscaping into the right-of-way. So I don't know how we do it for some, not for all. I don't think there's and if we want to say all or nothing, then that's the direction we go. But this idea of grandfathering in certain things and not others, it's, if I'm not going to create a hard structure with a fence, I can put in Japanese U and create a fence, So, and it still limits parking, it still limits the view. It takes away from everything that these right-of-ways were designed for.
I'm a little concerned that the next time we see this, it would be in the form of a proposed ordinance. We have so much that we have not yet agreed on, so how are we going to see an ordinance?
Why don't we just bring it back at next month or at next month's board workshop?
Workshop.
and-
We're still
in the
in-
form of an
no.
ordinance before we take it somewhere.
We're not even close to bringing it to the board meeting. It's-
Even in a proposed ordinance form, I'd like to see a new memo with all of these issues dealt with or options.
Well, it's like a term paper. He's writing the term paper, and then we revise it. You're a journalist. You know how that works.
Any chance that we could have a public comment or public, next month's workshop could have some conversation?
It's every workshop. Any citizen that comes to this workshop, that's the purpose of it. And you see how many citizens are here today.
Yeah.
But that is the purpose of the workshop. It's a back and forth dialogue among yourselves and also with if someone was here today that would like to ask Mr. Henley a question or any board member a question, that's one of the purposes of the workshop. So by definition, as opposed to a Board of Aldermen meeting, we don't want people standing up and asking questions. That's a totally different format.
And I think I think we should bring back an ordinance version to the workshop, and then, and maybe we already talked about this, and I apologize if I'm repeating things, but then, I think we need to have a public hearing on this issue alone with the proposed ordinance.
A public workshop, once we have.
Sure.
Oh, shit.
Meeting adjourned. Here we go.
I apologize for that outburst.
Okay.
That, so I agree with Alderman Allen about that, so that if you can come with some ordinance that even reflects 2 or 3 of these conversations, that'd be awesome.
I only said that in an attempt to try to keep the process moving forward. And so that way we can actually show folks, these memos can be written to say whatever they want, but the ordinance language is actually where the rubber meets the road.
One other issue that we have to think about in regard to if we do grandfather something, and this might be an extreme and silly, but I could see it happening. What if somebody goes out at night and plants some azaleas in front of their house and very carefully puts all the dirt away and remulches it? So it just overnight it appeared. How are we going to prove they just did that night? I mean, are we going to, unless we have like photographs of everybody's yard on the date of adoption, I just don't know how we're going to deal with people attempting to get around it.
Do you suggest that if people want to claim grandfather rights, that they present the evidence, which would, I presume, also be photographic evidence, time-stamped, and so on?
Somebody that doesn't request grant, doesn't say right now they don't have anything in their front yard and they decide they want to. So they go out there and serendipitously plant some, or not serendipitously, but they plant something, and in an attempt to make it look like it's been there forever, and we got to have some proof that it hadn't been there. But we got to have proof it wasn't there before the date of adoption of the ordinance. I mean,
Yeah, this goes back to this idea that, and I keep going back to short-term vacation rentals because it's very, that's I've got a lot of heartburn over it right now. But these short-term vacation rentals, one of the ways that you can prove you had one prior to the date of adoption of the ordinance was to show that you'd been paying your occupancy tax, right? Well, I promise you that many of those people that got permits at the time of adoption were not paying that tax, and they got the permit anyway. So, you gotta have there's a date and time, and you take it and you move on. And
hijack this, but speaking of that, can we get an update at one of our future meetings about short-term rentals?
All right, very, very good discussion. And do you have enough information for those 2 questions? I think you have to generate an ordinance and then bring it back to the next workshop.
I'm good. I'm ready.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate the hard work. Thank you. Item 4. Item 4 is the update on dredging of the city dock area. And this is Heather Hemphill and Mr. Jarvis.
Good morning, and thank you. This is Bob Jarvis. I think most of you have met him before, and he is graciously taking over 90% of my projects. So, thank you, Lord.
Are you giving him 90% of your paycheck?
I know. Oh, no, his is more than mine anyway. So. But yacht basin dredging, first item that we have here, basically we are simply asking at the board retreat for a decision on what area it is that you would like dredged. We have the federal area, and I think I sent a map, yes. And in that first map, you can see the federal channel is outlined in red, which is what is already actually permitted to dredge. The city, can everybody see that? Jamie has sent us this map, and it shows you two, what is it called? Geometry. I can't think of the name of it. Is it a trapezoid? Anyway, in the pink, there's two areas that would be included, which would be the city's portion, as far as that is what the city would be asking to tack on to the already area that needs to be dredged in the federal channel, which basically the area to be dredged in the federal channel is 50,400 cubic yards. With the addition of the area around the city dock, that adds 55,000, 5,500. There's a 4,700 area of cubic yards, and then a 700 area. So I think it totaled up to around 55,400. So the total amount to be dredged, if you include the two portions right at the city dock, the total area would be 55,800 cubic yards. So basically what the city's asking at the board meeting is for you to decide, are we going to work with the DOT to have them to dredge 50,400 cubic yards, or are we going to add the 5,400 at the city dock for a total of 55,800 cubic yards?
I think we add the, whatever it takes to get that dock
Dock,
dredged,
yeah.
absolutely.
By
Yes.
doing the dock, that does allow us to do what we had said in our plan, which was to get 10 slips, some designated to transient boaters, because we keep getting calls all the time, and we just had HP just put the you can't dock here sign yet, just because we don't have an approved access up. But in the original plan that we had to modify after Hurricane Matthew 9 years ago, we said we would do 10 slips, some transient, and then the rest for emergency boats, like
Municipal.
Municipal, like the sheriff's department, the city's own fire boat could be there, Coast Guard could have a boat station there, just easier access in the waterway for a water emergency. And so by adding those two parcels, that 5,400 cubic yards will allow us to do what we had anticipated and said we would do.
Yeah, this is an easy decision, I think. It's crucial that we go ahead and bring the city dock back to life. And Mayor Pro Tem's been working on this a long time, and it's certainly everything we can do to get this project moved forward. There's no grandfathering here. I mean, this is straightforward. We need to get this dredged and get these boats back in there. So this is wonderful. Thank you. Are there any questions for either Heather or
have
Mr.
one.
Jarvis?
Heather, so it looks like to me there's 3 pink boxes around the pier. Is the one to the left towards Southport Marina, that is not indicating an area to be dredged, I presume?
Those are arrows, John. Those are
Yes.
little arrows.
Yeah, there's.
It's not there's
Yeah.
just 2 little parcels.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't that belong to the marina anyway?
Yes, behind the.
Behind it does at
Behind
some
it is
point.
marina, yeah.
So if they're dredging, maybe they would like.
And they have a dredging.
They can't dredge there. I mean, maybe they could in the future if
Yeah.
they get it, but that's like got mussels and there's
Right,
a
that's
lot.
considered North Carolina Marine Fisheries Nursery, and so they will not allow you to dredge in that area now. Now, several years ago, when the water was higher, you could, but just the way things have taken shape, it is now declared a nursery. So no, that area back there will not be able to be dredged.
thank you, Heather, for
Any
your
other
work on
questions?
this. I'm really excited.
Me too.
And you're going to transition into permitting your next conversation?
next conversation.
Okay, because I had some questions around that.
Yes, and you know a lot more because you've been talking with the DOT, so you can probably help me and Bob, if you're ready for us to transition to that. Okay. The city has been working with Jamie with TI Coastal Services for assistance doing this entire project, and he's our liaison that has been working with the Corps and every other acronym that needed to be worked with. And so basically at this point, he has done what his original contract said he was going to do. And so he has sent another contract in that the board's going to need to approve for him to get to do the dredge and permit packet and everything. And I'm going to defer this to Bob because Bob's talked to him a lot more and can answer very specific questions regarding the contract and his conversations with Jamie.
Thank you and good morning. First, I want to explain, I'm still getting up to speed here, so while I may try to answer all of the specific questions, I'll do the best I can. As Heather implied, TI Coastal was brought in to do the initial survey and to give us a good idea of the limits of dredging as they've shown, and we're ready to move on to the next phase. The first element of this phase is to have a scoping meeting with the state and as Heather implied, every acronym that can be associated with this project. So we reached out to TI Coastal to give us a proposal to get us through that scoping meeting and to follow up with the various permitting as best as they could determine at this point without having additional schematic design or anything else. And TI Coastal did provide us with this. It was on an hourly rate basis. They projected an approximate amount of time that it would take. They also indicated that there might be some additional services that would be required, sampling and what have you. So we took their proposal and added a bit of a contingency to that to get to the dollar amount that you have before you today. What is it, 7,000? So with that, that's where we stand right now. We're ready to engage them. They are ready to get going. They have given us some time frames. Certainly, funding is still an issue, and an ultimate spoils site is still up and to be addressed. We do have some dialogue that we've initiated with some outside entities, and we hope to be able to follow that up again as we engage TI Coastal. So with that, I guess we'll try to answer questions you may have.
Any questions?
The only questions there, I'm glad you're connecting with them to help shepherd the permitting process because they'll be the most familiar and they'll know all the players. So just to make clear, you have to get permitting from CAMA for the entire project, and then you're going to tack on us to the federal permit. That's going to be the approach?
I believe that's the approach, yes.
Okay. That's exciting.
Yeah, we did ask, if we had to go through the state since there already existed a federal permit, but DEQ told us that we did. We had to go through that full process too, so that's why we're having to do both.
Excellent. This is as exciting as bringing the dock back. So we're one more step. One more step. So thank you both for this. Any further comments or questions? All right. Thank you. We look forward to this moving in the right direction. Thank you.
I assume that's on the June 8th agenda.
Mm-hmm. Item 6 is the Southport Symposium preparation discussion. Yes, that's right. Make sure we're saying the right thing.
Good morning, everybody. I'm pulling up the webpage here. Okay. Alrighty. So, basic breakdown or what this is just any questions that y'all have about what your symposium is to look like or what you would like it to look like. I am here to answer those questions for you. Or what the basic breakdown is, what we've done in the past, and kind of how the setup is that the departments, so what y'all would do, is have your presentations first. Did you send them the list? Okay, so go ahead.
I was going to say it's probably better if you can kind of dictate now who's going to handle what, and that way there's not as much confusion that day. So each of you could pick a topic or two, and then at the end there's questions and answers, which Cheyenne was going to talk more about the process, but that way you can focus on one topic instead of bouncing it all over. Might make it easier for you.
I think the mayor ought to do the mayor duties.
Solid choice, solid choice.
In terms of what?
Robert, I have a higher bid, over $100, for ways the public can participate.
I would do boards, committees, and commissions and how to volunteer. I could do that one.
I guess I'll do budgeting.
Yeah, good, John. Thank you.
Just not on camera. We can't delete that.
I can do goals and objectives.
Okay.
He's not going to be here. He's not going to be here.
We won't be here for that either. No, we won't be. It's on the 12th.
Ordinances, we could talk about ordinances and how they,
The beginning of this, when we stand up, introduce ourselves, is it basically what the one that I was at, the last one? I mean,
Yes.
give a little history of yourself and where you're from and what you're doing, and
We can definitely do that too. So with the it's definitely more casual. So it's not board meeting setup. Definitely more casual. And we actually we'll have it set up at the front. Y'all will not go up to the podium unless you really want to. You'll still speak from the tables. And we've actually made it where we have the handheld microphones for the audience. So after you do your intros and your presentations, I walk around with the microphone to the audience member or to the public and have them ask from the floor. So that way they don't have to go up. It creates more of that question and answer, like they're actually having a conversation instead of having them formally go up to the podium. But I think that would be nice to have a little background, not like the entire, like we don't need to know the entire, like y'all's entire resume, just like a short little blip, like a short little background about like you would be nice. And you don't have to tell us everything, but as much as you would like to, could be nice.
So just
I don't know, we're going to have to do more. There are more than 5. There's 6, there's more. Right.
So y'all switch that.
Are we going to switch that? You want to do it? I can do it.
No, I can do ordinance. It'll be okay.
So I'll take boards, committees, and,
Or I could do both, yeah. But are you goals and objectives?
I'll be happy.
Okay, so,
Well,
then you're doing both of those.
And that just leaves
History?
the community history
Community
left.
history?
I'll,
Mayor, you could,
I can take one.
Take the
You want me
community
to take
history
that
as well?
one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd be glad to.
When you take duties of the mayor?
Yeah, I've got that. Yeah. If I need, if you want.
what
if
about
you
the
need
ways
another
the public can participate in government? Do you want to do that one, Mayor?
person- Yeah. I'm
Oh,
sorry,
you got,
what?
oh, that's what you took. Never mind. Oh, that's right.
So I have the agenda on my phone. So do we have, we've done duties of the mayor. Okay, you got it there. I got it here. So that's done, duties of the board.
Community history?
Why don't you do duties of the board too, since they're kind of related, aren't they?
Okay. All right.
Tom, you could do history, community history.
Yeah, but that's one thing I don't know too.
Okay.
Someone else can do it, or?
That's fine.
What do I have? I have boards, committees, and commissions. And how long?
Who has community history?
Rich?
I can do it. I mean,
Ordinances? If you need backup from any of the visuals we've used in the past, just let me know, because we have PowerPoints from the ones that city attorney had or the ones we did at the orientation thing.
For finance?
There's some information, yes. I can send you, based on your topics, those pages, and then you can go from there.
If we create kind of the basis for a PowerPoint, can y'all put it together, or do you want us to bring something?
Yeah, we can work on that.
We'll work on it.
This,
Visual aids are always nice.
It's are great for the public to see.
Y'all like visual aids, don't you?
oh, do we need to just can community history? I'm not sure what community history has to do with the Board of Aldermen anyway.
Yeah, that's totally up to y'all. If we want to nix it, we can.
Nix it.
I'll do it very brief. It won't be long. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. It really doesn't fit. Yeah. You really think you can do that? No, I'll make it up.
You could also talk about, when it was Smithville, and then when it became Southport and
Yes.
the board and all that, so.
As it relates to the board.
Southport in 1792.
I mean, frankly, I personally would be interested in, when did we have our first board hall? How many mayors have we had? Was it Chief
Coring's grandmother a mayor?
She was, in fact, sorry, I can tell you a lot about that, and I don't want to take too much time, but I lived in their house. My house on Nash Street was his grandparents' house. Yeah, it was James and Dorothy Gilbert were his grandparents. James Gilbert was mayor, and I think he died in office, and they appointed his wife Dorothy to fill out the rest of his term, so making her, as far as I know, the first female mayor of Southport.
That's cool.
Have we had any other women mayors? Oh, of course.
So we'll keep it along that line of.
And so once y'all do your intros and then you present on each of your topics, after those presentations, then we'll open up, like if you have any additional, with your topics, if you have, once those points are done, we'll open up the floor for the public to ask Q&A based off of those topics. And like I said, y'all will be at your table at the front. I'll run around with the microphone, so that way the folks back home can ask any questions. We do filter some Facebook or Facebook Live questions through the symposium. So if anybody from home does ask questions, those we do try to answer if they come through on time, or ask if they do come through on time. And then we'll do them that way. So, what are your questions about the symposium?
So I do have a question. So we're going to do introductions kind of around the table and then go down the list of our category, or introduce ourselves, introduce our category, and then go to the next person. What is the?
That also, it's up to you. Since there's so many of y'all, I would probably do individual introductions first, so that way it doesn't get lost with introduction category, introduction category.
Yes, okay.
And then you'll have your nameplates as well, but I would do full introductions first and then categories.
Make a suggestion that ways the public can participate in government be the first item. How much time should we each plan on?
So we
using?
budget approximately 90 minutes to 2 hours for the entire symposium. So it starts at 2. We tell folks that it ends about 4 o'clock, and they've lasted about 90 minutes to about 100 minutes. So with that being said, the intro portion has typically, this is also the biggest group that we've had. Like, y'all are all the biggest one. Aside from Travis's folks, they were 5, and they lasted right at hour and a half, hour 45. So with that, 6, or what is that, 8 topics, I would say maybe, what is that quick math? Y'all, I graduated with English and communications degrees. What is that, 15 minutes each?
10 to 15.
10 to 15 each?
Including questions and everything, so we probably shouldn't plan on.
So maybe 8 to 10 minutes, really? So, or less. So,
It has been all over the place, I think, for the most part.
for y'all, it'll probably be, we already have about 10 registrants for the board symposium. Typically what has been happening, the trend we're seeing is double who register attend. And we see the registrations tick up the week of. I sent out the first social media blast last week. We've seen that the further out I send it, people tend to forget. So I start at the 2-week mark. I'm going to send another one out today, actually, and then I'll send another one out on Monday, Wednesday, and then Friday of next week as well. But we'll tend to see that tick up a little bit. So I would expect probably at least 20, 25 for y'all's. And then, of course, the online presence has been, that's typically where we'll see more as well, because it is in the afternoon, so our working folks from home will tune in digitally if they can. What other questions do you
Any
have?
other questions? I think it'll be informative for the public, and another way they can participate.
And if you have any other questions that you think of, just let Dory know, and we'll get you taken care of. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a setup for that. That's good. Our next item and our last item is the review of the June 8th, 2023 Board of Aldermen agenda. And that basically, if you have any questions, what we are doing is, Madam Clerk, item 9, I believe the public hearing and board action on conditional zoning, that's going to be, we're just setting a public hearing. That's going to be removed. It's not going to be on the agenda. We're just going to set a,
That's right. The
Set the
only
public
thing
hearing.
regarding conditional zoning will be a request to set the public hearing at whenever you
July
see fit,
meeting.
the July meeting.
and we'll be moving up item 13 to item 2. So we'll do that very
Is that
beginning.
because-
Resolution to adopt remote participation policy. Item 2, yeah.
Is code enforcement
Yes.
update? Okay, and then item 2 will be remote participation?
Correct.
And that is a item that needs a vote?
Right.
That's
Correct,
right.
okay.
One
then-
other, I'm sorry, one other change for the consent agenda, the budget amendment number 5 is coming off this month.
Also, we were adding the cemetery.
Right.
Remember, I sent you.
Yes, yes.
It's not on the copy I have.
I apologize. I've been updating them as I go, but I wanted to wait till we got through this meeting and
I
then,
totally appreciate
Yeah.
that. So would that be item
yes. it would
14, I
be-
get? 814.
Cemetery policy.
Just real quick, the ad hoc committee met, reviewed some bylaws, basically, which were taken, appropriated from beautification committee's bylaws, and with some changes pertinent to the cemetery, creation of a cemetery committee, so it'll be reviewing that. Our assistant manager has crafted committee ordinance that would need to go with it for board consideration, consistent with the other committee ordinances we just did at the last meeting.
Because we're creating an ordinance, do we need a public hearing on that?
You do not. If it's a code of ordinance, there's no public hearing required. You certainly are able to do that if you'd like. Only public hearings are required are for zoning amendments.
So,
Yes.
I just have two questions, I guess, about this. Are we charged credit card processing fees?
Yes.
Do we know how much those are?
We actually have Ms. Teresa Jones here to speak with you about that if you had questions.
Yep, I'd like to talk about that. And then the other thing is number 10 here, petition for contiguous annexation. Anybody have any questions about that, or am I just out on an island?
Yeah.
Teresa, do you mind?
Trying to answer your questions as best I can. I do deal with the credit card payments as they come in and processing the fees. Is the microphone on? There it is. I thought I turned it on. It didn't turn green. We do have fees. Previously, we had a $5 flat fee for every credit card transaction, but not in person. So if you walk into the office and you make a credit card payment, there's no fee. We don't charge a fee in person. But if you pay online, or if you pay IVR, which is interactive voice response through the phone, we had a $5 flat fee. And we got rid of that during COVID. When we first shut down for that, we stopped charging the fee to encourage people to make their payments electronically instead of coming into the office. We've revisited it a couple of times trying to decide if we want to add that fee back, and the board has said, no, let's just leave it alone for now. But now we feel like we need to start adding that fee back, and instead of going to a flat $5 like we were, if we go to the 2.5%, the standard payment, if you go at 3,000 gallons, which I think the average is 2,600 gallons a month. So if you go with the 3,000 gallon payment, it's going to cost $3.22 as opposed to $5. If you go above $200 payments, then yeah, you're going to hit the $5 and then some.
What is it costing us? That's my question. What is it costing us?
It varies between 1.5% and 2.5% per. It depends on its Visa, MasterCard. It's not like you get a bill and it says every payment is this percentage. They're really there's a lot of factors that go into it.
Why was there not a fee associated with coming in?
Well, when we started setting up with the credit card company, we were told that we were not able to charge a fee if it was in person. Don't know, I mean, I just noticed recently that one of the stores in town has that fee. They have a flat convenience fee on their credit cards, and they're all in the store, so they're charging it. So I guess it's something that we could look into again. It's just, in the past, we didn't charge it if you came in the door.
Over the last two plus years that we've not been charging these fees, do you have an idea of what this has cost the city?
Not as, let's see what we got here. I mean, yeah, we have been paying on the telephone and IVRs over $13,000 in fees that we've paid. That's just from, I think that was July 1 to now.
Okay.
Through April, I think it was $13,000 in fees that we've paid. So yeah, we are losing some. So what's happening is we're charging $128 for a payment, but we're not getting that amount. And if you do that across the board, and we do have a lot of payments paid by credit card, These customers are getting the benefit of their points on their credit card, and we're eating part of that fee by not, part of our payment we're not receiving. So that's why we were charging it to begin with, and we felt like instead of going flat, which hits the people with lower payments harder, go with a percentage. And then, we have people, we don't allow credit cards. Now, I should mention that too, payments for if you come in and you're paying a tap fee or, like $500 and above that are fees, like permitting fees, because we were charging $5 and that was just not fair at all. Now that we're doing the percentage, I guess we may consider, but we can't do it in person. So we're basically saying if you come into the office, you can come in and you can pay by check.
And do we have the technology to differentiate the percentage based on the card that they're using?
We don't. It's going to be a flat fee, and you really can't say this much for, like we take municipal payments now, which is the payments through the community building. So if somebody's paying a $2,000 payment for renting the community building, and then we were only charging $5 for that, that was, we weren't getting our $2,000 payment for that. And, some people were paying flat $2,000 with a check, and that made a major difference for what we were getting in for the revenue.
That's how, I know the IRS charges, if you want to charge your thing, they charge actually a huge percentage.
Right, yeah.
Any of that, so we definitely have to be whole.
Yeah,
And does that take into account, I know, is part of this a service we're paying for, like when they
Yeah.
do it remotely?
Right, there is. We have the subscription. It's like $225 a month just for the subscription for the credit cards. But then you also have your transaction fees that are that we get charged. And I don't have those numbers, but I know for April, I think it was like $540 for just the transaction fee itself for the credit cards.
Would that 2.5 take into consideration those expenses?
Yes.
Our debit card, do we charge transaction fee on a debit card?
We charge it with our system. It doesn't matter if it's a debit. I think the fees might be a little less if it's a debit card, but we can't say, okay, you're doing a debit card, so we're going to charge you less. I think some systems do that, but if there's a way for us to do that, I'm not aware of it. We can look into it, but.
Well, I know this is dangerous, and I don't want to create a lot of work, but if we could look into that, I just found something on the internet that says in North Carolina you can charge a service fee on a credit card but not a debit card, which probably is not true, but if we can just confirm that.
Okay.
And check with the attorney about the walk-in thing, because that, either you can't do it, you have to do it remotely so that we get that fee or not.
At one time, there was some kind of crazy law, and I think that's been at least 10 years ago, was changed, where you remember back when places were given a discount if you use cash, and then, I don't know, there was some whole deal about you couldn't do that, and you couldn't charge credit card customers more. We just need to look into all that and see. It doesn't make sense that you can do it on a internet transaction, but not in person.
Well, there's several contracts that we have. The one through Springbrook, which is our platform that we use, but also through Bluefin. So there's like 3 different pieces to this whole situation. So I can check into that and find out what those differences are.
I have a question. I think I know the answer, but I'd like for you to illuminate this. Why would we have a difference in doing it online versus coming into the office? Same credit card, same charge, but you don't have to pay the fee when you come into the office.
Yeah, she's going to look.
That's
She's
what
going to
I
look
thought
into that
yeah.
and figure out why that's the case. That doesn't make sense.
When we initiated it, well, when we initiated, we were told that we could not charge for walk-ins. That's when we started going with this company. They said, you cannot charge a fee for anybody walking in the door, but doing it on the phone or online, you can charge that fee. So that's what we did. Now, I don't know if, I don't think that's changed that I'm aware of, but I will certainly contact and find out.
How long ago was that? Sorry.
They have a computer in the pay area.
We do.
So people could access through that to pay.
They can, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Correct, that's what I mean. If we couldn't do it as a walk-in, then they could maybe
So what you're saying is you think we should charge them whether they walk in or not? That's what you want us to do?
Yeah, the credit card fee is the credit card, because it's costing money.
Okay.
And wasn't your original goal to try to encourage people to start doing automatic payment?
And we were not allowing, for whatever reason, when we initiated the credit card system, we didn't allow our residents to go set up a recurring payment through their credit card. We were trying to encourage payments through bank draft or ACH because there's no charge to the bank for that, to the city. So if you'll set it up through your checking account, then no charge, it's great. And we let you set up that draft and it's no fee. And if you do it through your online, and do it recurring, then they don't have to think about it. It's coming out, they're getting their credit, they're getting their points on their rewards, and then we're paying a fee, especially when we did away with the $5 convenience fee and no fee at all right now. So I can look into those.
Brings up another point too. Can our online system, instead of using a debit or credit card, do e-check type thing that wouldn't incur a cost to us?
It can do that, but the bank reconciliation is a nightmare because those take like 5 to 7 days to actually hit the bank. So then we're getting these payments in, but they're not actually hitting the bank until the next month, and then you've got all kinds of, so we started out doing that, and then we said, no, we can't do checks. So we took that away as an option. So that's what we said, well, ACH, you can easily do, you can do it through your bank. You can go to your bank onto your online bill pay and do a check payment that's recurring, and you don't have to, do anything through us. You just do it. We have lockbox now. Those payments go directly to our lockbox, and we just upload that file to the accounts. And they can be done as an ACH or as a check. So the problem with online bill pay used to be those checks might take 5 to 7 days to get to the lockbox or to our office. But now when you set it up, most banks allow that to be an ACH automatic transaction, so you don't have to wait for those checks to clear. But yeah, that's an option through bill pay.
I'll think of it in a sec, hopefully.
The credit card questions are sort of a very subtle thing, but it's meaningful.
What day does if you set it up automatically, what day does it come out of you?
If it's set up on an automatic draft through us, it's on the 15th on the due date.
Okay.
And it's like there's 600 accounts that are being drafted, so we have to initiate that draft 2 days prior. So we do have, if you have a problem and you have a bill that comes out and it's $2,000 because you had a leak, you have to notify us. And I always tell them that when they set up an account and they do the draft. If you ever have a problem and you need it not to happen this month, notify us at least 2 days prior to the 15th so that it doesn't, once we initiate that draft, we can't stop it without stopping everybody's.
All right, thank you, Teresa. That's a lot of good information there. All right, anything else on the agenda? Any questions? Okay, board. Any board comments? Yes.
Want to talk about that? The
If
speed
you'd
limit
like,
in the yacht basin?
if you have questions or you want to have a discussion, absolutely.
I'm awfully glad we're doing this, if we're doing it.
What are we doing?
It's on the agenda, the
Reducing
speed
the speed
limit.
in the yacht basin to 10 miles an hour.
Why would, I'm struggling with that because the speed, you can't go more than 10 miles per hour anyway.
That's right.
Are there already signs there that say speed limit? I can't remember. I guess my thing would be sign pollution. If there are existing signs that say 20 miles an hour and we replace them with 10 miles an hour, but I would hope we wouldn't add signs. That's what I would say.
I understand your point, but I think that we should err on the side of greater safety.
As long as it's enforced. if there could be all the signs in the world, but if it's not enforced, it means absolutely nothing.
Agreed.
I get the feeling that our police chief would like to see this enforced.
All over town, we should be enforcing our speed limits. Speed is not good. Okay, so the board the agenda looks good to the board. Anything else?
Alderman Carroll, did you have questions about the annexations? Annexation? No?
No? Okay. Any board comments? Alderman Allen? Okay. What? I'm
Sorry,
sorry,
we
what?
do need,
What other thing?
we
What's
need
the
to
next
talk
one?
about the noise ordinance, particularly involving the city trucks that come through and the trash collection. Bonnie asked me to remind you.
Is that on here?
Yes.
I mean, where? Oh, you're talking about on the agenda.
on the agenda
Oh, yeah,
for
the
the board
agenda.
meeting
So
next
she wants us
Thursday.
to talk about the noise ordinance.
Because we need to get direction as far as what you would like us to change, because now we're getting complaints about the trash trucks coming in early and our street sweeper truck coming in.
Okay, I can leave that quickly because it's the complaints. I don't know if you've been getting them, but I got complaints about the dumpsters coming in at 5:30, 6:30, banging around and waking people up in the homes in the residential area of the Yacht Basin, and then the street sweeper, having to come early because you're trying to get there before parking. The corollary to that in terms of the picking up the dumpsters is that the restaurants in the Yacht Basin say that they get their deliveries early, and so that's why they like the trash dumpsters being picked up early, so those trucks are not in the Yacht Basin at the same time. So why they all have to be there at 7 o'clock, or you think they could stagger it somehow, but that's the etiology of and I received a text that how nice it was this morning that the dumpsters were not banging around until 7 a.m. So we have some controversy there, and something we certainly can talk about.
Over
No.
when the dumpsters are emptied. I'm happy to send a letter to Waste Management or to
Yeah, that's
Green
already-
Life or
already been
whatever
done.
and
Already been done,
ask
so-
them to change it, but there's really nothing we can do about that.
Right, no, that was done, and that's why they waited till 7 o'clock, because the ordinance says 7 a.m., is that correct, Mr. Henley?
Yes, it does, and
Okay.
currently there is no exemption for city work.
What time does our street sweeper get out there? Because he was still there when I got here this morning. He was still out, and he was going in and out of
Right
Parked
now,
cars.
my understanding, and this is my understanding, is that they're following the noise ordinance. So they're not starting until after 7.
I think y'all know how I feel about the street sweeper, but since we bought it, for us to do anything that impedes its ability to do the job we wanted it to do, what was our original start time for? Well, we didn't have a noise ordinance, okay. When does the street sweeper want to start?
Most of the public services doesn't get here until 7 or 7:30, so I don't think they would start before then anyway, but it's just a matter of if we want to change the ordinance to make it 8 o'clock so that it doesn't interfere with any.
The trash can in front of my house gets picked up about 6 a.m. So, I think there has to be province for some of these maintenance things, and we all hear them come through at 6 a.m. or whenever, but that's sort of, number one. Number two, I think Public Works needs to clarify when they're the most successful at street sweeping, because the House Street where Port City Java starts filling up at 7 a.m. or whatever, so I don't know how they're going to ever clean that street there. So I think it would be helpful, one, if Public Works would tell us what they need to do their job well, and then, I have some concerns about saying to trying to regulate a dumpster in the yacht basin. Only reason I'm saying that is because the yacht basin is so unwieldy anyway. It has so many moving parts, and it's like the game with only one square missing.
Yeah, I think that the noise ordinance should specifically exclude this type of activity. I don't think it should be included in this, unless we decide we want to just do away with garbage pickup and go to a dump site. Let's see how that works.
Isn't that part of living in the city? Things start early. People should live in New York City, and then you'll see what noise you have.
So would you like to include an exemption for trash collection and make like municipal service work?
I think so. I think you have to. I think that we have to, our city has to continue to be successful. That's why people came here. And then, you know, we're going to complain about, no, you can't have it both ways.
Is this a discussion on the agenda? Are we voting on the noise ordinance, or this will be?
Put on the agenda it's on the agenda for our next meeting, and this will be part of that revision of the ordinance. This is a workshop to look at the ordinance or anything else on the agenda and revise and add and that type of thing, but there's no vote until the meeting.
No, I know, but I mean, we are planning to vote at the meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. On
Okay.
So what do you see from other communities? We can't be the only community that's dealing with trying to get our streets cleaned and food in and out of our restaurants and dumpsters. I mean, is this a good idea to specifically exclude that type of activity from a noise ordinance?
I think so, yes. If it's the most efficient use of city resources to do these activities early, my own professional opinion is yes, it would behoove us to exempt ourselves from the ordinance. If it's a public necessity and it gets things done and gets them out of the way of the rest of what happens in the city environment, then that would seem to be worthwhile.
The next complaint we'll start getting is that the street sweeper's slowing traffic, and it's, you know, in parking spots. I mean, so you can't, you know, we've got to, and so I think that's the direction we should go.
I just got a message from our city engineer, Tom Zilnick. He said the street sweeper was starting much earlier and finishing by mid-morning. Now it goes out in accordance with the ordinance.
So it could start earlier if it's exempt, and also with trash pickup, you're also exempting that from, is that correct, Alderman Carroll, Alderman Allen?
I don't have a problem exempting the city. I don't think the street sweeper needs to go out before 7, but that's just my opinion.
In terms of trash pickup, are you including that also as a public a service that should not be handcuffed by
The draft
the
language
noise
just
ordinance?
exempts the city generally. It doesn't specify specific activities that the city is doing. It exempts the city.
Well, is a third-party garbage pickup in the yacht
it's a
basin?
contract.
That's a contract, and I think frankly they should be exempt too.
Then
Since they're hired by the city, we have a contract with them, then they're probably through the yacht basin, so.
Restaurants,
Right.
they have
it
their
would
own
not
contract.
exempt activities unrelated to either the city itself or contracted with the city. The draft does not do that.
Add to exempt.
Well, you need to be specific in your language.
Well, yeah, we don't need to exempt the restaurants. They're not
No.
emptying the trash. We just need to exempt the city's contractor who's picking up the trash.
Exactly.
Right, which would include Yacht Basin or Atlantic Avenue or, wherever they pick up.
Street sweeper used to go out before 7 once upon a time,
It did.
several years ago.
Did.
'Cause I used to
said
hear
4 or
it all
5
the
o'clock in the
time. In
morning.
fact, I once sent Bruce an email as a citizen, oh God, asking him to please wait a little bit before sending the street sweeper out, because I thought it was going out a little early.
So just to be clear, we understand the dumpsters are private dumpsters in the yacht basin. It's a contracted thing.
sentence that says city and contract, city, yeah, just are exempt.
We'll have
Trash
that
collection's
language for
exempt.
you by the meeting next week.
Unreasonable? I know I asked that question, but is this third-party garbage pickup unreasonable to exempt?
I think as long as we're specific, it's not unreasonable. But
Maybe if you could find other, I hate to say this, but maybe if other communities, if we could have some example of what other communities, so we're not just, we understand other people have that same issue.
Wilmington do. I mean, they have all those restaurants down there and Third Street and that type of thing. How do they dumpsters? Yeah, right. So if we could check into that and see how they coordinate food delivery and dumpster pickup and that type of thing. Okay.
You can research that and get it out to you before the board meeting, so
Okay.
you'll have it.
That'd be great. Thank you. At the 12th meeting. Anything else on the agenda for our meeting on the 8th? Any other comments or questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Gross.
Thank you for all that you do for the city of Southport. One of the, is it on? Okay. All right, so, yeah. You're a great group to work with. Highly intelligent, too, I might add. And good looking, yeah. There you go. So, one of the weaknesses in the city of Southport that you rightfully have identified is our lack of policies and procedures. That's not uncommon in small municipalities. I find it everywhere. So in the upcoming board meeting in June, you'll get 2 of my first new policies to review and hopefully approve. When Bonnie and I got together, she asked me to assess our policies. So I began to assess our finance policies and procedures. And my summary to Bonnie was, we have 1 current, 2 outdated, and 19 non-existent. So I began to identify where the priorities needed to be. The first one I wrote was fund balance. And it is unbelievable how many municipalities do not have a fund balance policy, even though GASB, LGC, Government Financial Officers Association, all highly recommends we have one. So I began to research municipalities all up and down the East Coast, from Connecticut to North Carolina to South Carolina, pulling resources from LGC, GFOA, and I wrote this first policy. I felt really good about this policy, and I still feel really good. It's pretty well textbook from the LGC language. There is one change I'd like to make for you to consider before you approve it, hopefully at the upcoming board meeting, and that is related to the accessible fund balance, which is going to be found on page 2 under item 4. I'd like to change that from 25% to 35%. And the reason I want to do that is Bonnie recently put me on to a fund balance policy that the town of Bluffton, South Carolina prepared. And Bluffton is not unlike Southport in that it's a small community. It started out with 1,000 residents. Over the last 25 years, it's now grown to 28,000. They recently received a national award for their fund balance policy. And obviously, each individual community has to assess their own risk. So the percentage that we come up with on what should be a reasonable and appropriate fund balance policy rests with each municipality based on our risk of catastrophic events in the future. So I would, based on what Bluffton did, they had a really long process. They actually contracted with a university to do a study on impacts of hurricanes, and it was a very lengthy process. And in the end, because they are a coastal community and because of the risk of catastrophic events from hurricanes, their accessible fund balance policy is 35%. And I feel more comfortable that our accessible fund balance policy should also be raised from 25 to 35%. Now, there's also another number in here called total fund balance, and that's still at 40%, which I'm comfortable at that level. What is our current rate right now? We're at 62%. So we're in really good shape as a community, in my opinion, professionally, to deal with any unforeseen emergencies that might unfortunately hit Southport. But I wanted to bring that to your attention. I would like to change that, make that one minor change from 25% to 35%.
What does 35% equate to of our current in dollars? Like
So 8.33% is 1 month. So we're talking about a little bit over
4 months.
No, it's actually, well, that's for the accessible. 40% is approximately 5 months, so it would be, it would be 35%. That's 35% of 12 months.
Okay, and we're about our fund balance right now is about. The fund balance right now is what,
62%. So
Yeah, but can we do it in dollars?
Oh, I believe it's 5.7 million.
And
I believe it's 5.7
And the
million.
general fund budget is about 7 million?
11.7, 11.8.
Like I wouldn't, and I'm doing the schedule session on budgeting, so I've got some work to do. So 35% of 12 million is 4 million, roughly.
Yes, approximately. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think frankly, I think our fund balance needs to be more like 50%, honestly.
When we're talking about accessible fund balance, so that means that's looking at the fund balance, not for the budget of the year.
Correct.
The
accessible fund balance is assigned as, or is defined as a combination of assigned fund balance and unassigned fund balance. Those are two items, and there's definitions of these in the document, that these are fund balances that have not been already obligated, restricted for other activities.
So then it would theoretically, you're saying you could spin it down to 5%? Based on if we were at 40?
Technically.
I'm getting to what John's trying to.
Technically. Most municipalities that don't exist along the coast, their fund balance policy is between 8 and 15%. We're unique as Bluffton is, and certainly we need to take into our consideration our location, the number of hurricanes we get here annually, and the risk that we're at. But right now, we have no fund balance policy.
No, this is awesome. Thank you so much for bringing this forward. What I will say is I did look up Bluffton, and I went through their whole budget. They're actually 55 square miles, which is dramatically different than us.
Sure.
And they have two huge resources that we don't. They have a 2% meals tax, and they have their accommodations tax is considerably more than ours as far as what their revenues are. So they have other sources that we don't.
Revenues. Excellent. Okay.
Do you have a thought on what that should be, what percentage, or are you comfortable with 35%?
Well, I think for the accessible fund balance, I can tell you when Florence came through, we spun it down to, I think, nothing, if I'm remembering right. Now, we get reimbursed, we reapply, and we get reimbursed by FEMA, but I'm assuming the accessible fund balance is for those situations where we have to have available cash that we can access.
Exactly.
And if memory serves me, I feel like we actually borrowed money from either maybe the electric fund or the sewer fund, we could borrow money from it, but we had to pay it back. There was certain restrictions, and maybe Dory is familiar with that, but there's certain restrictions around that. But because of just those impacts, so I think it's wise being able to. You don't want to put yourself in a bind where you can't access what you have.
Sure.
And so, and I can certainly see where 35%, we might need to access that, given a major catastrophic situation.
Rainy day savings account.
Now, back to the 40%, my jury's still out on that with my head.
Any other questions? That's a really good conversation. I'm glad you're bringing those policies forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Very good. Any other June 8th agenda items we need to discuss? Any questions? Okay. Board comments, Alderman Allen? Alderman Carroll? Mr. Lombardi? Alderman Marsteller? Alderman Davis?
I think we have a busy enough agenda.
No.
Joke.
Yes, no. So this has been an excellent meeting today. I would call it delightful and informative and most pleasant. And I hope we have our June 8th meeting will be as similar, also on the 12th. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mayor Pro Tem, and the second by all in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.